and welcome back to a brand new episode of Virtual Coffee. My name is Alexa Collier, and on this podcast, I interview and chat with small business owners from around the world. Now, with me today is Eden Estabrook. This is Eden's second time on the podcast. Her first episode aired on November 8th, 2023, so almost exactly a year ago. Be sure to check out that episode first to be introduced to Eden, just kind of get to know her and her business of being a children's book author. Now, on this episode, Eden gives us a one-year update on her children's book and also gives us a sneak peek at her second book, which will be published on November 30th. I won't give too much away, so let's just get into the episode itself. Now, be sure to follow Virtual Coffee on Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias. It's all at Virtual Coffee Podcast. And give us a rating and review on Spotify Podcasts and on Apple Podcasts. Just helps others discover us and then discover the small businesses that we feature. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. And now let's hear from Eden. Welcome, Eden. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for coming back on.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I'm excited to catch up, see what's been new with you. I mean, I've been following along on social media and whatnot, but it'll be nice to catch up via a chat, a conversation. For those who may not have yet listened to your first episode, which shout out was on November 8th, 2023. So almost a full year ago, which is cool. But
wow.
Give
really
folks yeah, I know, right? I thought the same thing when I was looking that up. I was like, it feels not that long ago.
It felt sooner. I wasn't expecting almost a year.
Yeah, and I think
that
I
honestly worked out well.
Yeah.
No, that sounds about right, because I think I started a lot of my social media before, because Arnie, the first book that I launched, and I know, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched it, I'm a children's book author, but my first book published November 1st, and I think I started doing all of the social media outreach before, so that actually lines up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I remember when we recorded, it wasn't out, but we knew it'd be out once the episode went out. Something like that.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask to give a brief intro of who you are for those who may have not listened to that episode, which you gave a little, but yeah, tell us a little bit more, Eden.
Yeah. A little bit, yeah. So I am a children's book author in Charlotte, North Carolina. On November 1st, 2023, I launched my first book, Arnie the Armadillo Goes to Antarctica, which is an illustrated adventure designed to engage children with vocabulary words that start with A, thus the theme in the title. I have been a very, very busy bee since that episode launched. I'm no longer selling all by myself. I have bookstore partners now and some small business partners local to me, helping me spread the armadillo love, as I like to say. And so it's been a very full year of armadillo related activities.
That's funny. That's a funny way to put it. How did that launch go? Take us kind of back to a year ago. Just upon reflecting this past year, how did Arnie's launch go?
It went well. So I made I've learned things along the way about just sales in general. For those that don't know, my day job is actually in marketing, but it's in a B2B standpoint. So I've never actually done a business to consumer model, which is what children's books are, where I'm selling directly to a human. So I learned very quickly that there are sales cycles. And I'm definitely putting that knowledge to use here as we're heading into Christmas. But the launch was great. I was competing with the holidays, which, when trying to get RSVPs for a launch party, right around the holidays, it's tricky. I think I did it the week after of Thanksgiving, but it was fantastic. It was welcomed greatly by the local small business communities here in the Concord, Charlotte, Statesville, Mooresville areas. And I felt nothing but support from everybody that I talked to. So it was encouraging and definitely, good to hear, as Arnie was a proof of concept for me. Not a lot of kids' books are challenging the vocabulary status quo for kids, I think, quite like Arnie is. And I guess I needed to prove to myself that there is a market and that parents understand the value of exposing their kids to more complex vocabulary than they might think their child can understand. So it's been a great year, a very fulfilling year, and a very validating year, as Arnie has done quite well with his singular book.
That's wonderful to hear. I remember you mentioning when we last spoke how, like we'll see how this first book goes, hopefully you can write and publish another one. I remember that being, kind of in your mind of how is this going to go. So it's great to hear that it was successful. And I know you're on the second book. Can you give us any hints or any details about that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're following my Instagram, and if you're not, then highly suggest you pause here and go follow Arnie the Armadillo on Instagram. I did announce the launch of book 2, or book B, as I like to call them. I kind of call them book A, book B, and then as I continue, that'll be my best shorthand because the titles are a little long. So Arnie the Armadillo Goes Backpacking in Brazil comes out on November 30th, and it is taking him we are going from the snowy mountains of Antarctica to the tropical climate of Brazil. And I am super excited to share it with the market. I work, especially being self-published, I work with, people that have helped me edit and just refine the text just to have that second and even third pairs of eyes. And I've had a lot of feedback that they think this one might even be better than the first. So, once it pops out, we're going to have to see what people think about that one. But I am super excited to share everything that Arnie does in his adventures in Brazil. It's been a whirlwind, not going to lie.
I can imagine, but that's so exciting that second book's coming out, and I hope everyone adds it to their list, their holiday list, if they have friends having kids and all that good stuff. I've been meaning to ask you, why did you go the route, or was this always the plan? And I guess I'm asking, how did you choose to keep Arnie and not do another character with a B? Because that was my first thought, was, it's going to be a different character. So why'd you stick with Arnie?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That was not the original plan, to stick with Arnie. The plan was to do a different animal for each letter. Ultimately, it came down to market awareness and branding. So much of my branding is around Arnie the Armadillo. My Instagram handle, even when I go to events and they say, "Who are you?" And I say, "Eden Estabrook." They're like, "Who?" And I'm like, "Arnie the Armadillo." It at this point, I am synonymous with the armadillo. And I really felt that removing that from the equation would do more damage than good. Plus, Arnie is adorable. So what I did, and what will probably continue to happen, is he's probably going to continue to meet new friends that do start with those new letters, but Arnie will probably remain the same curious main character that he was in book 1. So that was really what drove that decision to keep Arnie as the main character. Was, could I successfully change essentially the brand that I've developed over the last year, which was the armadillo. And the general consensus was no. I think people love Arnie, and the kids know Arnie now, and especially a lot of the ones that come to my story times here, they know him. So why change something they love?
That makes sense, and I'm glad you dove into that, because I think it's an interesting business piece of what you're going through, because that's good advice for almost anyone who has their own business, or really in general. I mean, you could take the advice to anything, but to not be afraid to pivot the plan, because like you mentioned, that wasn't the original plan, and then you realized, well, Arnie's working, so let's stick with Arnie. And I think that's a great reflection, because I think we can, speaking for myself, we can have these ideas and think, that's the best idea, I need to stay the course. But along the way, you might make those changes that are better based on what you learned and how the situation went. So I think just your answer gave really good advice in itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I said my original plan was a ballet dancing bison, so like we really we we really changed routes
Yeah, that's so funny.
to what we have now. But the bee theme is still very prevalent in the
Right.
book. As a sneak peek for those who listen to this episode, he's going to meet his brother Benny. So we do maintain that the lettering theme, even though Arnie himself starts with an A, all of his new encounters in this book, including his big brother, will still keep the storyline going in a direction that makes sense.
That does make sense. And I'm thinking now too, even like reading books to kids, I'm glad you did stick with Arnie because it's probably easier to say like, oh, what's Arnie going to do next? Like, let's bring out the next book.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it may have felt like two very separate books that aren't in the same universe.
Exactly. And I think, what we're trying to do is because Arnie has worked so well and is so memorable. I mean, a lot of kids don't know what an armadillo is, especially here in North Carolina. We don't
Hmm.
really have a lot of armadillos. There are a couple, from what I understand. They're starting to migrate over, but it's a largely unknown animal here in North Carolina. So, they are learning a new animal, and I think that continuation of the armadillo universe, for lack of
Hmm.
better words, plays an educational role as well as just helping them recall what they might remember
Right.
from the first book.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of aspects in there.
Hmm.
Kind of on the same business train of thought, have you had any other logistical or process or business like evolutions or changes since the first book?
Yeah, so many. So first and foremost, so I self-published and I self-published through Amazon. And I learned very quickly that Amazon has crappy print quality. So I pretty much had felt I needed to fix that immediately. So I did go on a search for a US based printer. I personally feel very strongly about keeping as much of my business as possible here in the States. So I wanted to find a US printer, and I did. And the book quality that I have now is just, it's fantastic. Anyone who's ever interested, I always like to show them, the ones that I give to my bookstores versus the ones that came from Amazon. I pretty much don't even advertise Arnie on Amazon because I don't like the quality of the books that they're sending them. If you buy from me, you have to spend a little bit more because you have to pay for shipping,
Hmm.
but you're getting a much better quality book. And so there's been some education there for my marketing and just my audience on like, look, yes, you can buy my book off of Amazon. No, it's not going to be the best. So here's why you should do it this way, or buy from one of my small business partners or the indie bookstores or anything. Any of those options are better than buying it off of Amazon. So that was the first and the largest evolution from the start of sales in November to now. Is I have a printer set up, and honestly the price difference is not very big. I think it's an additional like 50 cents more per book, which is not bad at all. So there's that. I've definitely have learned about sales cycles and what months sell better than others. I know like last year I dedicated a lot of time in January and February to events and just trying to keep the sales going after the holidays. And I think I sold one book out of my 6 events in January. So I am taking a vacation in January. I will not be working.
Fair.
um, I wasted a lot of money and a lot of time based on some of those learnings. And I also, on the same note, I didn't plan for summer. I didn't even think about the plethora of children's activities that wanted a children's book author or somebody to do a story time or anything. I had, I think, 12 events in July, which is a lot. I always like to remind people I do work full time. So I do Arnie the Armadillo in my evenings and my weekends. So that was definitely something I didn't plan for, but now that I know can plan for the next time around, and maybe I can, take it a little lighter in those months leading up to it, and then
Mhm.
just plan better. So those are a couple of small things. I've dabbled with additional products like stickers and a colorable bookmark and some t-shirts, but ultimately I've learned a lot of people just really want to focus on the book. So I think, I'm going to kind of carry that through into the second book.
Those are great Great learnings. And I appreciate your honesty in those because those are the details I like getting into of, yeah, had 6 events, sold one book, so how are we going to
Yeah.
learn from that? As opposed to, sometimes on social media it can always look like, wow, like you did 6 events. That's
Hmm.
incredible. And that is an accomplishment. But on the back end, you have to balance
Yeah.
it with, well, what were the outcomes?
I now have a spreadsheet that literally tracks every event that I go to, and then how much I paid to be at that event, and then how much I made. And so now, I mean, any opportunity that comes my way, now that I have about a year of historical data, I look back at that spreadsheet and I'm like, okay, last time I was in, we'll just say this part of Charlotte, how much did
Sure.
I spend to be there? How much did I make? Should I go back? And then just because there is only one of me, and it's like I want to be at as many places as I can, but let's be realistic. I can only be in one place at a time. And especially in my business, I can't outsource my business to someone else. Like I know a lot of small businesses who will have friends run a booth for them in one location while they're at another. I can't do that. People want to buy a book from me. So I have to be very choosy with where I go just to make sure I can get the best possible outcome for my time.
No, that's a good point. And I find myself even thinking for myself, like dreaming is so easy to do. Like, oh, we could do this, and all these ideas. And
Yep.
then you
Oh
do
yeah.
have to come back to reality. Like those are good ideas, but to your point, like even
Hmm.
with your spreadsheet example, you have to look at
Yeah.
the reality too, which can be hard to do. It can be a little
Yeah.
heartbreaking, but it can also
I know.
be yeah, it could also be rewarding of, you have, like you said, you have that data, you're making changes, and hopefully
Hmm.
you'll be able to see that upward trend with this coming book.
No, absolutely. I mean, and being able to, you're able to maximize the impact of, what
Right.
limited time you have. I'm very blessed in this particular industry. I don't have to prepare products. So, I know a lot of the people that make handmade stuff, they have to prepare for markets. So thankfully I just have books sitting on a shelf. I grab a stack and I run out the door. So that's helpful in the long run, but it's still, to do an event still takes a lot of time, takes time. I
Mhm.
can't go and do other things as I'm sitting at a table. So I really want to make sure that if I'm somewhere, I'm at least getting some return on investment for
Right.
my time since I don't pay myself.
Yep. Yeah. No, exactly. I like that you say, "Oh, you don't have to prepare products." Yeah, you just have to write a book and get that all situated.
Well,
I'd
once
say
it's done, though,
that's
it's
a feat.
done.
I know what you
But
mean.
once
I
it's
just
done,
thought it
it's
was funny.
done. Like, yeah, my printer at this point has the files, and I just tell her I
Hmm.
need X amount of books. She gives me a quote, and I say, okay. But yes,
No,
getting
that's
to that
awesome.
point definitely does take some time.
Right, right. I
Book
can
two
imagine.
since March, I think. So,
Wow. Okay. Yep.
um, it's definitely not something that you can throw together last minute. As I also learned from last time.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
We did not, both my illustrator and I had obviously we had never done a book before, and so we were like, yeah, we can get this done before the holidays. And coming around the second time, she was like, yeah, Eden, we need more time. And I was like,
Yeah.
understood. I think we need more time too.
No,
So
that's fair.
we built
Um,
in a solid 6 month buffer.
Nice, nice, good. All good lessons.
Yes.
I was gonna ask if you're working with the same illustrator, but it sounds like you are.
Yes, I am.
Nice.
I plan to
Awesome.
keep her until she quits the biz. So,
Great.
I mean,
That's
it
wonderful.
helps from a continuity standpoint. Nobody knows Arnie quite like she does. She's also local, so I mean,
Mm,
once again, I'm a big proponent for keeping my business here in the States. And I know that is something that's often outsourced due to the cost. But I'm here to tell you that we have a lot of great talent here in the United States, and I would highly recommend the premium cost for a U.S. author or a U.S. illustrator.
so that's wonderful to hear that you're still working with the same illustrator. Kind of going back to the events you mentioned, do you have a
Mhm.
favorite event that you've done in the past year?
I really love story time on the alpaca farm. So for anyone who hasn't read my book, Arnie does meet his friend Albert the alpaca in Antarctica, and I just love being able to bring books to life for kids. So, obviously I can't take kids to Antarctica, but they can see an alpaca and they can feed them. We've got lots of alpaca farms here. In fact, I had one yesterday, and they're always a well-received event. So I would say those are some of my favorites, because not only do I get to read a story in the middle of an alpaca farm, but at the end I get to feed some alpacas and get to see the kids all really excited to, give a bag of food to a very friendly alpaca. And it's just a really special time. I also really love school visits, although I don't get to do a lot of them because I work full time and I need to take paid time off in order to do them, which I do. I give myself one PTO day per semester. So that's 2 school visits to do them. And those are always really special. The kids love to see you, and they're always there with hugs at the end. And they're always very encouraging of the story. I remember the last one that I was at, they all were kind of one up each other with how much they loved the book. I say like, oh, I loved it 1,000%. And another one was like, I loved it 1,000,000%. And I was like, it's just, they're so sweet,
Mm-hmm.
So those are 2 definite favorites. Arnie's launch tour for his second book is going to probably be really fun. I've found several ways to engage with other local small businesses to bring parts of his book to life. And I'm very excited to have those as an offering when I go on tour for book B.
That's awesome. Those sound so fun, and I love the
Yeah.
kind of the world you're building. Like you said, the alpaca farm, because that's in the book,
Mhm.
and just like the ways you're kind of bringing it to life. That sounds really fun to think about how to do that. It just sounds fun.
Yeah. I mean, as an adult, I love watching books like turned into movies and like experiences like, tied to, the books that you're in. I know here in Charlotte, we have a lot of like prohibition, like, 1920s events, and those are just fun. It's fun to immerse yourself in the world that you read about or heard about, and kids are no different. So I said, I've got several things on deck for Brazil. I'm going to try to bring a little bit of Brazil to Charlotte, North Carolina. So wish us luck.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see how that comes about and manifests in real life. Now, with you still working full time, Eden, how has that been? Like, is Arnie? Do you find him taking over all of your free time? Has it been manageable? Just kind of want to do like a year in plus check in on how that's going.
Probably depends on who you ask. If you ask my family, they're saying slow down. So, I work a pretty standard 9 to 5. I do go into the office, which takes up drive time. So, a lot of Arnie is done from about 7 p.m. to 10 on the weekdays, or on the weekends, which is when he primarily has all of his events, is on the weekends. It's definitely been a busier season of life than I would have expected, but I also don't know how to sometimes say no, which is where I think my spreadsheet has helped a little bit with like, should I take on this opportunity? Should I not? Because I am still trying to leave room to have some semblance of a social life, that has succeeded so far. What I've kind of told my family is, I am in a season of life where I do have extra time. I'm single, so I don't have a significant other. I don't obviously have the responsibility of children, so I can dedicate this time to invest in the next generation in this way. And to me, it feels like a worthwhile use of my time to be able to be a presence in the lives of other people's children through a lot of the events that I do. I started off doing a lot of like market events where like I sit behind a booth, but with the addition of bookstore partners and store partners, a lot of my time has kind of morphed more into doing story times and events where I'm actually engaging with children. And I think that is a very good use of my time, that I feel like I can come home even after a long day at work. If I'm going back out again to do something like that, a very fulfilling experience.
I love that answer. And I remember you said something similar last year about how it's just worth your time. Like you enjoy it, it's worth it. And I'm happy to see that passion's still there, because I know it can take a toll on you, right? When you're trying to do your own thing and build this business and you're working full time. And I'm sure there's hard days, but I'm glad to hear that overall you still have have that
Yeah.
passion and willingness to put the time into it.
There definitely are lawn days, but I tend to do a lot of those lawn days on the couch in front of the TV. So, it doesn't always feel like work when you're responding to
Sure.
emails while watching a show. So
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I like that balance.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Eden, any other updates you want to share? Anything else top of mind? Definitely shout out that publishing date again and where folks will be able to find Book B. But other than that, anything else top of mind?
No, I mean, I pretty much think I gave you my life in a nutshell in
Awesome.
in about a 30-minute recording period. So I feel like I've covered a lot. It's been a great year, and I'm looking forward to another good one. Book B does publish November 30th. It will be available on Amazon, but I would highly recommend that anyone listening to this follows me on Instagram at Arnie the Armadillo, and they can find all of the indie options for purchasing my book, including from online. So I have partnerships with some online stores like OTB's, which is it's a completely online bookstore for indie authors like myself, run by an independent book author. Don't take the easy way out. Yes, Amazon is there. It's available and it's an option, but highly recommend going to my Instagram, Arnie the Armadillo, or my website, which is meetarnie.com. From there, you can scroll all the online and in-store options to purchase.
Awesome. Well, thank you for letting us know where we should get it from. And we have to do the question I end every episode with, which is, what is your proudest accomplishment so far? And maybe for you, we can say proudest accomplishment within the past year. What would you say that is?
Honestly, just the amount of books that have gone to new homes. If you ever email me, you'll see, and I put it as a joke, but my email signature is like Eden Estabrook, and it says author plus CEO plus CFO plus CMO plus COO plus all the things, because literally Arnie the Armadillo is run by me. And I say this in all humility, like I've accomplished a lot in 1 year, essentially by myself. I do have some friends that have helped out along the way, and I'm forever grateful for them for running errands for me on occasion. But all the back end stuff, all of the pitching to bookstores, the events, they've all come out of my own blood, sweat, and tears. And I'm immensely proud when I look at just my sales transactions and how all of it, how many books I've been able to send home with people, and even for the price that I've been able to do it. Arnie is only $9.99, which if anyone familiar with the children's book space knows, the books are not usually that cheap. But I felt very strongly about doing everything I could to make Arnie accessible across as many budgets as I could, and I took a financial hit for that. Like, I did it for y'all. So my ability to, or my inability, I should say, to hire external help because of the price, I did it for a reason, and it fuels everything that I've done over the last year. So I don't know if I could quite pinpoint one, just everything that's happened and how it hasn't been a total bust.
No, that's a huge accomplishment, and yeah, congrats on everything that you've done in the past year, and I look forward to Book B and hopefully more books to come. Just shout out one more time where folks can find you on Instagram, social medias. Just shout everything out.
Instagram is my main hub, so go there. It's at Arnie the Armadillo. Or you can go to my website, meetarnie.com, and there's a contact form there where you could send me an email as well if you just want to say hi, So go to one of those two areas. And if you don't have Instagram or email, then ask a friend who does.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks, Eden, so much for coming back on the podcast. And it was great catching up with you.
Yeah, great catching up with you too.